Underside of domes that don't look right, nozzles are not all created equal, and blobs of doom that just oddly keep getting worse. All this and more, PrintFix Friday, episode 71. Let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to YouTube's longest weekly print fail fix video series here on YouTube. Remember, you can submit your print fails for me to take a look at and give you a hand. And if you include your social media links and I remember to, I'll give you a shout out in the videos as well. You can reach out to us via any of the social media links on the screen, slide into those DMs, or email us youtube@3dmusketeers.com. We got a bunch of really awesome fails for you guys today, so sit back, relax, and enjoy this segue to our sponsor, 3D Musketeers. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we are sponsoring our own videos still. Hopefully that changes soon, but I greatly appreciate everyone supporting us through these awesome growth times. Thank you guys so much for what you do. If you are looking to outsource your 3D printing needs, rapid prototyping, product development, and more, you can do so by reaching out to us at 3D Musketeers. Links in that description down below. We've over 40 years of combined experience, 15 of those mine alone, and over 40 printers to help you make awesome every single day. We also offer 3D scanning, CNC milling, laser cutting, and full art-to-part CAD design work. We love helping people make awesome every single day, but we recognize a lot of you just want to get your printers up and running, and that's what this whole series is all about. And you might want to kick us a couple of bucks to either help support the channel or minimally come and hang out with all the other awesome people on our Discord server. And you can do that by heading over to Patreon or YouTube channel members and joining for the $10 tier and higher, which gets you access to come hang out with the other D-Gens and myself and the team, where we've actually been playing a lot of video games together. It's been a lot of fun. I appreciate everyone getting together and hanging out on the Friday and Saturday nights that we tend to do. But anyways, I appreciate everyone's support. Thank you all for 9,000 subscribers, over 1 million views. We're actually on track to hit 10,000 subscribers by the end of February of 2023, which is absolutely insane. Thank you guys so much. We'll have to put together some sort of really cool 10,000 sub stream. So let me know what you guys think that you'd like to see in it. And if you skip these sponsor segues, you won't even know that I'm even thinking of doing this kind of thing. So let's get back into it before people leave the video. New to 3D printing and not sure why my bottom layers look like this. Description and comments. I actually don't need to go to that. This is a common thing that happens. People that are new, let's talk about it. 3D printing in FDM, this is an FDM print, is like making something out of wet spaghetti. And that means if you can't support said spaghetti and you can't cool it fast enough, it's going to start wrinkling and warping. That is precisely what we have going on here. The spaghetti isn't properly supported. Now, for something like this, I would actually recommend lopping it in half and printing it big flat side face down and then glue it together. I know you'll have a visible seam, but that is a lot easier to deal with than this. When it comes to FDM printing, there's really not a good way to get around this particular problem with the printing itself. When you're dealing with layer heights of 0.2 millimeters, which sounds very thin, because it is. It's about 2 to 3 hairs thick, so not that thick at all, but it still has enough thickness to become a problem because you're not able to create that smooth surface. In a part like this, the best thing that you can do is slow down those bottom layers if you don't want to cut this thing and make it a lot of very, very, very fine layers. Most 0.4 millimeter nozzles can print as low as 0.05 millimeters and be totally fine. It's going to take way longer, and that's where something like adaptive layer height would be useful. We'll have a video on that coming up when we have a video going over Prusa Slicer, which is my preferred slicer and the one that I want to focus on covering here on the channel. We've covered other slicers as well. We'll card to that playlist so you guys can take a look. And when they have major updates, we'll make sure to do an update video on those as well. But Prusa Slicer is my preferred, and it is one that I know better than others. So it's the one we're going to be talking about relatively soon. But what we have here is some delamination on the part itself, and that again is due from cooling. If we enhance the photo, we're able to see we don't have a circle, we don't have a circle, we don't have a circle, and finally, once we get out to about here, we have a decent circle. But the other problem that we're dealing with is we have a Z-seam, a pretty visible Z-seam, and that is from your retractions. So let's take a look at settings that they might have to give us. Having issues with the little bubbles. Hey, that's Z-seam. Cool. They actually know it's Z-seam, so great. Good job. That's what we really like to see. It says, hey everyone, I'm new to 3D printing and noticed that a lot of my prints have issues with the first few layers. It happens more often on curved round objects like this Yoshi egg. Printer is an Ender 3. Filament is congruous, PLA 1.75. Cure slicer with mostly just default settings for the Ender. Bed temp is 60, nozzle is 210, speed is 50, but the initial speed is 15. I'm not sure if it's a bed temp issue. Egg is printed on a raft. The issue doesn't seem to continue throughout the print. They've gotten a lot of help, but I wanted to make a video about this because this person's not the only one that's going to be dealing with this. Something to note, I'm normally completely anti-raft, but Frank from Frankly Built has made a pretty good argument for rafts, but it's a thing that shouldn't exist. So Frank's argument for using a raft is it basically makes sure that if you don't have a perfectly level bed, that by the time it starts to print your model, the raft is now perfectly flat. And that's fair, but I would say it's better to level and tram your build plate, have proper Z offsets, all videos that we've covered in the past. And if you don't, then yes, okay, a raft can save you. But otherwise, rafts are not all that useful. Again, with this Yoshi egg, I'd be cutting it in half. It will be considerably better for you to just put it together and smooth out that seam. A lot of people are using things like modeling clay or even drywall spackle as a poor man's Bondo, if you will. That is considerably easier for the average person to get, use, and be able to post-process because it's an easy thing that you might even have laying around. But in this particular case, there's not much you can do. It is a cooling issue at the end of the day. You can go ahead and lower your layer heights, up your cooling, and slow your speeds down, but it is still not going to remove every part of this, and you will still encounter this problem from time to time. Is there a way to fix it completely? No. There isn't. When you're dealing with the underside of a dome, right? The underside, you're going to have this problem. That's why a lot of people will move over to resin printers if they're trying to do spherical objects or parts that require heavy amounts of detail, things that just FDM printers can't do. I don't think there's a necessity here to go over to resin because as we know, resin is toxic, and for newbies, I don't recommend resin. It's really just messy and a pain in the ass to deal with, where FDM and FFF are much easier to handle at the end of the day. With that being said, you can look at trying to slow your printer down, go to lower layer heights, and if you want, look at aftermarket cooling solutions. As for the Z-seam, you can look at dealing with how fast and slow you are retracting and de-retracting. Remember, you want to get it out of the nozzle relatively quickly. For a stock Ender 3, 5 to 6 millimeters worth of retraction at 50 or so millimeters a second on the out, and 25 millimeters per second going back in will be pretty much a good solution. Obviously, test it with some retraction testing. At the same time, you can run temp towers and the like to really tune in your filaments. But I don't think any amount of like hardcore proper cooling is going to solve that problem. You will need to have some supports there as well. And I mean, realistically, you could do perfect with soluble supports, but you can't really do that on an Ender 3, and it's expensive and a lot of work, and no one wants to go through that right now. So the best thing you can do, cut the model in half, work on your retractions, and life will be good. Hope that helps. Just got a new nozzle and it's significantly shorter than my old one. Is it okay to use? Prusa MK3. The answer is no. This is a fun one. You're dealing with two different types of nozzles. One, on the right side here, we've got an E3D V6. And if it's not having any issues, there's no reason to replace it. It looks like you got some filament stuck in there. That's okay. A torch or even a lighter will heat it up and get it out of there. If your nozzle is clogged, you can look at doing a cold pull. We're gonna have a video on that coming up soon. So if you are dealing with clogged nozzles often, make sure you get subscribed because we are going to be talking all about that. But yes, you've got a problem. Your MK8 nozzle, which is here on the left side, will not fit with an E3D V6 block. What will happen is that your nozzle will end up bottoming out on your block rather than bottoming out on your heat break. That is what you need it to do. You need it to bottom out on the heat break and not hit the block. With something like this, you're going to end up having to put your block much closer to your heat sink, causing problems where the heat break itself is not going to function properly. I have seen it work if you get your block really close to your heatsink, but it's not recommended. Buy a V6 style nozzle and you won't have this problem. This will also mess with your first layer offset because, as you can tell, the actual nozzle portion of it is considerably longer. So all of your offsets that you have set for your MK3 will now be different. So unfortunately, you've ordered the wrong component and will need to replace it with a V6 nozzle. Now, again, you can easily clean out these nozzles. And if you are having issues with clogging, take a look at the filament that you're using or the environment that it's printing in. If you have a 3D printer set up in a wood shop, chances are you're going to get more clogs than you would if you have it set up in a guest bedroom or something in your house where it's not really disturbed often and there's not a lot of debris in the air. But in this particular case, it is not the right nozzle. You got to go get a new one. To even further describe that, we've got an individual here who is having an issue with their Prusa. And they did the exact thing that we saw in the previous fail. They have an MK8 nozzle on their Prusa Mini. And even further, their probe is way too far away, okay? And you might think, well, Grant, of course they're far away. Look, the probe's over here, the nozzle's over here. It's not what I'm talking about. The probe is much farther from the bed than the nozzle, and this is because the nozzle is longer than a V6 nozzle, the actual nozzle post block. Once you install it, an MK8 comes out considerably farther, and that is something to note. So the Mini is going to fail on its bed leveling because it's going to end up slamming the nozzle into the bed. So if you do want to use an MK8 nozzle for whatever reason, I mean, you shouldn't, but if you do want to use it for whatever reason, you will have to readjust where your pin to probe is. What Prusa recommends doing and what I recommend doing is to get your nozzle, basically touch the build plate. Loosen up the screw for the pinda and drop the pinda down. Some people will use a credit card. I like to use the tail of a zip tie, and that is the distance that I use. And it's roughly the same for every one of our printers behind me. And that means that our Z offsets are pretty consistent between them. Makes life a little bit easier when you're trying to remember what printer is set to what. But that is absolutely the problem that I see here. And the machine itself runs into problems. And you can see the nozzle is basically touching the build plate. It makes me cringe every single time I have to watch this. But the machine fails its calibration because the nozzle is hitting the bed and it can detect that. Remember, Minis and most Prusas don't actually have end stop switches. At least the newer ones don't. They use sensorless homing, so it can detect when that nozzle's slamming into the build plate like it is. Like I said, Pinda is too far away. Why is that a MK8 nozzle on a V6 style hot end? Very, very simple. Apparently, I'm not alone in thinking this. And yes, you could look at loosening it and dropping it half the way down. The pinna should only be about the width of a credit card height above the nozzle, if that makes sense. Other people like me and use the zip ties. Local maker MI, I believe they're a Patreon supporter. Thank you for your support if you are. And if you're not a Patreon supporter, you can absolutely join our Patreon. Links are in that description down below. But yeah, this is minimally adjust your pinda, properly replace the nozzle with the right nozzle. Brim not sticking to build plate. We've got a brim not sticking to the build plate because, we talked all about this in our Z offset video. They're too far from their bed. We definitely have some valleys in between our lines, and that generally means that we've got some issues here. It's connecting a little bit there, but otherwise we're not getting a lot of stick-activity. We should look at making sure that the bed is clean. Wipe it down with 91% isopropyl alcohol or higher and a paper towel. This is an Ender 3S1. I think this has got that Creality Sprite extruder thing. It's got a CR Touch bed leveler on it and some fancy holographic sticker that says it's crap anyways. But yeah, the nozzle is too far from the bed. You can look closely at the lines. They should be flat on top or slightly squished and not rounded. I 100% agree. That is the problem that we have here. Go take a look at the Z offset video that we did. We'll card to it so you can go take a look. That is absolutely my recommendation for this one. Go take a look at that. It will absolutely help out. Next up, a fail from our own Discord server, MadCat USA, you glorious bastard. You keep breaking your Sovol SV06. And we've had a lot of questions about the Sovol SV06 since we did the unboxing and first test print live on the channel. We'll card to that so you guys can take a look as well. And I kind of love it. That printer is way better than it should be for the price. We will be doing a follow-up video on it in a couple of months once I have some time to really mess around with it. But so far, the Sovol SV06 is exceeding my expectations for it, which is pretty hard to do these days. I'm not really impressed by a lot of these affordable printers right now, and that one is absolutely impressive to me. And if you guys are wondering why it's impressive, go take a look at that live stream. You'll see why. The Mad Cat here, this is his second Blob of Doom that he has dealt with the Sovol, and this one's pretty bad, to the point that it actually unplugged the heater and thermistor. The thermistor plugs in there and the heater plugs in there. And this is nice for the Sovol that it is relatively easy to service. It's a couple of screws, the whole hot end comes off, there's that ribbon cable, and then you're able to deal with it there. I do like that. That is a massive feature over other machines, because you could still leave in that ribbon cable, flip the whole thing upside down and heat it up, and then slowly work on peeling off that material. But because it is a non-standard thermistor, I am curious to know what the overall extent of replacing it would look like, because I don't know where I could buy replacements for it. Now, in this particular case, not only did we laugh at him, because, you know, we laugh at each other and then we try to help him out, told him to get that thing warmed up, which it looks like he definitely didn't do, and actually looked at trying to cut through it and work around it. What we see is that the silicone sock did not save it, and in fact might have actually resulted in making it worse. What happened here is, I believe we had a first layer failure. It got stuck up around the nozzle. That material kept building up, pushed the sock off, and now the sock is sitting there being dragged around the bed, and all that filament is building up on the inside of the printer sock. In a case like this, reattach your heater and thermistor, get the thing heated back up, and then let the plastic fall off. That is normally my best way to handle something like this, and I recommend that's what you try to do as well. You can try to go in there and use a heat gun or a soldering iron or something like that, but one, it's gonna stink, and two, you might end up melting parts on your printer. So if you do utilize extra heat, be very careful to the administration of it, because you're gonna potentially melt things. You know, don't do that. Don't do that. If you are diligent and careful, you can work through and find that heater block hiding under there. As for dealing with it in the future, obviously watch that first layer and make sure it sticks. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of textured build plates. I know people love them, and on the Sovol, it's worked okay, but I definitely see more issues with parts warping up a little bit than I do on smooth plates. Is the bottom surface cooler? Yeah, it looks nicer. Does that matter to me? No, it doesn't. I'm more about function than I am the way that things look. Obviously, look at me. I care more about function, and I barely function as it is. That's talk for another podcast, where we actually brought on a therapist to talk all about imposter syndrome. One of my more recent favorites that we've had in a while, because that's one that I think the industry needed to hear. We'll cart to that so you guys can take a look. Yeah, you didn't think I was going to get all deep today, but here we are, episode 71. You know we got to get into it eventually. But yeah, something easy to handle, guys. Just be careful not to cut the wires, because there is no going back once you cut those wires. MK3S with dual extruder 10 and 5mm nozzles. There is a lot to unpack here, and initially I missed something. So let's go through what my initial thoughts were for this photo. The sock has fallen down. We can see that it is almost at the edge of the cooling duct, and I believe the nozzle has sheared off. If it hasn't sheared off, it is just dumping filament into this sock, and then the sock is then dumping filament out. This is bad. So we've got the opening where the nozzle comes out, and then the opening where the screw that holds the heater in place comes out as well. And both of them have filament coming out of them. Now, this could happen if you do shear off your nozzle, because it's just going to start dumping filament out, and it's going to end up curling as it cools down relatively quickly. But we've got another problem that was pointed out to me on Twitter. So thank you, Baloo, for pointing that one out to me. They have a new fan duct, but have not removed the support material for it. There is support material right there for that fan duct, and that is built-in support material that comes on the part, and you have to remove it before you install the fan duct, because otherwise the fan duct doesn't work. So that might be the problem that we're dealing with. But yeah, I think the nozzle might have sheared. A lot going on there. But yeah, support is still on your fan duct. And the next person saying that seems to be the least of their problems. There is a lot here. But yeah, in this particular case, make sure you get a nozzle back on there, remove that support material from the fan duct, and clean up that hot end, because that hot end is going to be covered in plastic. And it's certainly been there for a minute, because this is black, and that means it's been burned. That one's going to be fun, but thankfully it's a Prusa. It's a E3D V6. Heat it up, take off the sock, let it go ahead and get all that plastic off. I generally use a thin Allen key to get it out between the heat block and heat sink, but otherwise it's going to be pretty much okay. You can look at cleaning out the inside of the sock when it cools down. The plastic should just fall right out of it. You can replace the sock with a new one or use the old one if you feel so inclined. Otherwise, you'll be all right. This one is absolutely recoverable. That's all I got for you guys today. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. What do you think of these fails and my fixes for them? I'd love to know your opinions. But stay safe out there. Don't forget to call your loved ones. And as always, keep making awesome. Have a good one. Hey, thanks so much for watching this video, and a massive thank you goes out to all of our Patreon and YouTube channel member supporters. Without you all, these videos would not be possible, and their names are listed right next to me at the $5 tier and higher. Remember, you can help support us directly. Links in that description down below. Right below me will be the entire Print Fix Friday series, where we're able to look at fails and a couple of memes every now and then, and how we decide to fix them here. Sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm wrong, sometimes I just like having a little bit of fun. And right next to that will be our series all about getting your printer running in tip-top shape. I'll see you all down in those comments and in the next one. Take care.